Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the Titletown Rundown here on Boston Sports Zone. Our first episode here on Boston Sports Zone. Joey Matroni alongside Kyler Quelch. We're very excited to be back with you talking everything Boston sports, and we are especially excited to have joined such a great group in Boston Sports Zone, and we're excited to continue talking sports with the best fans in the world. Kyler, we've got a lot to get to this evening.
Yeah, first of all, I want to talk about our partnership and thank Pete personally for giving us this opportunity. It's just going to give us more of a platform while still keeping the ability to have the creativity that we would like to have here on the Titletown Rundown. And we are so thankful for those of you who have already followed us and encouraged us to keep going. So we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to go over some quick socials, you can follow us now on Twitter slash X at Titletown Pod. Our episodes will now be uploaded to the Boston Sports Zone YouTube channel at sportszone_BOS, and our Instagram and TikTok are at Titletown.rundown. And as we've done with every one of our episodes so far, we'll begin with a little bit of a Red Sox recap. They actually got a series win, which we haven't been able to talk about rather that much recently. They take 2 out of 3 from the Texas Rangers, and in pretty decent fashion as well. They outscore the Rangers 16-4 in the first 2 games before ultimately losing Game 3 by a final score of 6-4. So a positive series victory for the Red Sox, but some issues still loom large in my opinion, especially their reliance on the pitching, to be exact, is something that sticks out to me. Looking at the 3 games in terms of starting pitching for the Red Sox, in Game 1, Sonny Gray had 5 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. That led to a win. In Game 2, Ranger Suarez, 5 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, and a win. And then the outlier here is Connelly Early in Game 3, and 4 and 2/3 innings pitched, 11 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 walks, and only 3 strikeouts.
Yeah, you know what that screams to me? Inconsistency. You know what? It doesn't take much to know what's going on here. I actually do have to give them credit for winning a series. Hey, they won a series, great. But we know every time they win a series, it goes downwards from there. Unless they prove me wrong. Hey, if they prove me wrong, I'll be like, I'm sorry, and I'm still a part of Red Sox Nation. But here's the thing. You're right, Joey. They have these good games or these good series, and then it's like the next night you're like, what happened? And I think it just kind of screams to what we've been talking about all along about inconsistency. And, there's so many other teams that are in that same boat as well. And I think it could probably be because I think that the CBA will run out at the end of the year, and I think there's a lot of teams that just started slow, but also might not invest as much because there might not be a season next year.
Yeah, but the way that the Red Sox have really operated in the past, I don't know how much that does factor into it, just because they've not really shown the desire to really spend that much money. They signed Alex Bregman last year to a deal that you don't see very often. It was a 3 year, $120 million deal, which was in essence a set of 3 1 year, $40 million deals, which he eventually opts out of and then signs with the Cubs. And we've talked about Alex Bregman at nauseum on this podcast, but despite the fact that he hasn't been having a great season over in Chicago, it begs the question that if he did stick around, the kind of veteran presence that he would bring as a member of the Red Sox, that Willson Contreras has kind of filled in that void in terms of veteran presence and offensive prowess as well. Um,
It isn't enough, though. It isn't enough. And I think with Bregman and Cora last year, they got those guys to overperform a little bit. But at the same time, should I really have to be telling a team that really wants to compete, hey, like you might need to go get a couple of right-handed batters because you are left-handed heavy and you do have some holes that you got to fill. And
Yep.
and I'm not saying they're a bad team because I actually think they're the best worst team I've ever seen in my life. Where they find a way to lose, and it's just astonishing because it's like you're talented, but you're not showing it in the win column. So
But they
that's the
also
point.
very much know what their formula is for winning. They have a staggeringly good record when their starting pitchers go 6 innings or more, and in those situations, the offense is able to get you just enough runs to get those wins. But
That
furthermore,
shouldn't be good enough. Your lineup shouldn't be living on a prayer. As much as I love that song, I don't want to live on a prayer with this Red Sox team in their lineup. It's a little ridiculous if you ask me. But
yeah, just to go over some quick stats from this this series rather, I should say. I mentioned Willson Contreras earlier. He had 3 home runs in the series, and then I got a nice little tidbit from a friend of mine in terms of how well Willson Contreras has been this season. He has the sixth highest OPS in the MLB, and he also has the best OPS out of right-handed hitters, as the rest of that top six are left-handed hitters so far in the MLB. And with his success, and he's really been the home run hitter um, for this Red Sox team. They've been down the bottom of the league in home runs pretty much the entire season, and he hits 2 home runs in Game 3 against Texas, and you still end up losing the game 6-4 because you couldn't dig yourself fully out of a 4-0 hole that was dug by Connelly Early in the first 2 innings as he continues to struggle with giving up the home run ball. He gave up a leadoff shot to Wyatt Langford in that game, followed by a 3-run home run by Kyle Higashioka in the second inning. And the offense was able to put some stuff together, but not enough to come away with the win. They are off tonight, and they'll be getting set for a series against the Toronto Blue Jays on Tuesday as well.
nice Cubs
And
jersey, Joey.
yeah, okay. I promise this is a Boston sports podcast. The Cubs shirt was a gift, birthday gift from a friend, and it is Alex Bregman on the back. I know you can't see it, so there's somewhat of a connection, and I really wish that we hadn't lost Alex Bregman after a year because I think he would make a difference. That I
Even just
mentioned
his
earlier.
presence. Look at how
Exactly.
the young guys looked at him. They looked at him like he was the manager of the clubhouse. He kind of is kind of like what I think we're looking for, Joey, when we talk about a failure as an ownership group, where he was the guy that kind of taught them how to be a professional, how to not maybe slack off. We've heard a lot of rumors about maybe some of the guys go out at home because they are younger. And I think a lot less of that would happen when they're losing because you have like a Bregman who can say, hey, maybe when we win the World Series or maybe when we win, our first series in the playoffs or something, maybe we do go out a night. But he kind of taught you how to be a professional and how to like just go about your business. And now you have a triple A manager, a double A manager who just stands in the middle of the base path, and an ownership group that needs a compass because they're so far lost in their own decision making process that, it's just a disaster. You know,
Yeah.
I hate to bring that up, Joey, and bring up all of the points I brought up over the past few weeks, but I think it's time. And I'm also going to bring up another point to make it interesting, too. Johnny Miller, who was an iconic voice in the Boston media and really kind of inspired me anyway. Um, as somebody who he just turned 77 and he was in the press box for the first time since 2024 due to having health issues. So they just had him as like a ceremonial thing be up there on Saturday. He was the guy that would always ask the first question, and he had the raspy voice, but he would always ask the hard questions. And to you and me, Joey, like he had cerebral palsy. He was this guy who was fearless. He wasn't afraid to ask the tough questions, but he was also respectful and like a nice guy and like somebody that you and I could like look up to. But here's my point. Even in the Boston media, because the Globe now is owned by John Henry, you see guys like Alex Spear who just talk so much like a computer. I can talk to AI and have a conversation with Alex Spear, and it's the same thing. There's no accountability. It's I believe in the process of blah 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 because 4 times 4 equals 16, and excuse me, where's the accountability? Like this is a problem within our like our daily lives. But at the same time, where am I getting that same level of we need? I mean, Boston Sports Radio will always be famous for it, but you know, since like a guy like Johnny Miller has retired, there is no person that's giving them those. Why did you make this decision?
Yeah.
Accountability.
I think that is a very interesting point that you bring up, and I think that this is kind of the philosophy of how the Red Sox have been operating over these past couple of seasons, in that they are looking at their analytics and they believe that there are certain things that will work out, and they can do all the simulations and anything that they would really want, but you can't know that something's going to work until you see it happen on the field. And I think a good example of that um, is the start of the season that Caleb Durbin had. Thankfully, it's gotten much better since then. But they had the idea that Caleb Durbin was going to fit well with Fenway Park as a right-handed hitter and utilizing the Green Monster to the best of his ability. That really didn't show up early
Contreras
on
was a
in the
good one.
season.
Contreras was a
And
good one. I'll admit.
Contreras, Contreras is the outlier for a lot of this because he does fit Fenway Park very well. He's shown that with his ability to hit home runs, which is something that, as we already mentioned, the Sox have severely lacked this season. And if they didn't have his offensive output, I truly don't know where they would be, because they're already in last place with him, and I'd be scared to see what they would be like without him. But I think that, furthermore, on that, there need to be decisions as to what where the Red Sox are going later on in the future. We saw the report come out last week that Sam Kennedy, John Henry, and Tom Warner have no intention of firing Craig Breslow at this juncture of the season, which we had a long discussion about on last week's episode, which you can find on our Titletown Rundown YouTube channel. And I it's a back and forth kind of idea on whether or not to keep him. But I think what we came up with is that if you did decide to fire Craig Breslow, then you can have someone new attack the deadline. Whereas if you keep Craig Breslow, it doesn't seem like he's going to put the team in a great position post deadline. And then building off of that, there came the report after that one from Bob Nightingale of USA Today that there's not a lot of belief around the league that the Red Sox really do want to keep Greg Breslow. So the understanding is that he's going to be gone at the end of the year. So at that point, why do you let him control how the team looks post trade deadline in comparison to what they're going to look like at the start of 2026, 27?
Here's my feeling, Joey, and I think we're on the same page on this. But if you really aren't happy with his direction, why don't you have somebody else make the trades? Like tell Theo Epstein to get back into the seat. If he really has to, because I've heard a lot of rumors too that we know that Breslow's not the only one making phone calls at this point. It's like Kennedy and Theo probably are probably getting a little bit dirty behind the scenes, so to speak. Guys who are a little bit more respected, but listen, if you only do deals with teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates and the St. Louis Cardinals, you have a problem. Yeah, like not even the fact that you're not able to make a good deal, but the fact that that you're just you can't even be respected by the league to make a good deal. And then you end up getting shafted on some of the deals because teams won't give you a fair shake.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the names being thrown around as possible guys that could move at the deadline are the veterans on the team, like Sonny Gray, who's been great for the
Chapman is the
Sox.
biggest one.
Chapman is the biggest one. Another report, according to Bob Nightingale, he's the most likely to be traded, but there have been conflicting reports also that he's not going to be moved, as well as Willson Contreras is obviously an option, but the more he keeps hitting, the less and less that I want him to be gone. I think he really needs to be the offensive spark plug for the Red Sox because uh, someone like Jaron Duran, who's been a spark plug for the offense in the past, has really had sort of an up and down season. He had an insurance home run in one of the games against Texas, which has been nice to see. And I think that Ceddanne Rafaela has been a nice addition to the offense as he's begun to hit again more consistently. He had 5 RBI in the series against Texas, so that was nice to see. He seems to be getting comfortable in that 2 spot in the order now, which is nice because for a number of years recently, he's been most comfortable in that 9 spot, almost working as a second leadoff hitter. But I think that he works well at the top of the order as well, thanks to his speed. And if he can continue to improve his contact, take his walks when he needs to, and limit his expansion of the strike zone, I think he's going to continue to improve into a much more well-rounded hitter.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do think he is a good hit. He's a good hitter. The problem is he's not a disciplined hitter. Sometimes, where he, like you said, he'll expand the zone or he'll swing for the moon, and it's like, you need a little bit, you need a little bit of contact. You need a walk too, like the fundamental part of hitting. But he is skilled, and we've certainly seen that. And defensively, he's awesome. That's why you and I both would probably keep him. But Joey, what would you be looking for in a trade package at this point for
Um,
one of these veteran guys?
I mean, I would have to look at the prospect list for whatever sort of team, whichever team you decide to work or trade with, and I think that you're going to come back to a point where, with the move for a prospect, you're not exactly sure what they're going to look like at the major league level. And you could end up in a situation similar to the start of this year where you're expecting guys like Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony to become a big part of the offense. But I think that if you're looking to add to the team while also subtracting, you could look for some moves where the Red Sox are getting a major league level reliever back in the package because you can never have too many good relievers, especially with some of the up and downs in the bullpen like Tyron Guerrero and Danny Coulomb, who have been on the better side recently. Um, and then you never know what you're going to get with Greg Weiser. He's probably the hottest topic of discussion when it comes to the
He's a
Red
wild
Sox
card.
bull.
He's a true wild card. He's either gonna strike you out or he's going to give up 6 runs, and Slayton struggled a couple outings too. So,
Yeah,
I know
Slayton's had a really and Slayton's had a really interesting year where he's either given up zero or multiple runs in every outing. So
it's like
I think
wild
that
card season, man. It's horrible.
yeah, um,
It's
which again,
inconsistency again.
which ag- this comes back to one of the points that we've been talking about throughout the year. It puts so much pressure on the starting pitchers to go deep into games, to get to the Whitlocks and the Chapmans of the world. And we've seen in some of their struggles, it just seems in struggles, meaning when the starting rotation doesn't have great starts, it seems like they look fatigued on the mound.
What do you think the best path forward is? Like maybe like looking ahead to a year or two down the road. I mean, do you completely blow it up, or do you keep some of those younger guys as well?
In terms of the roster, I'm keeping most of it together, but I do think it's time to get rid of Craig Breslow. If it was my decision, he probably wouldn't.
Absolutely.
He wouldn't attack the deadline. But I would continue to build around Roman Anthony. I think that although we talk so much about Roman Anthony, and yet he's been out with his wrist injury for so long now, and the report that has been circulating around with Garrett Crochet also on the injury side is that he won't be back until until after the All Star break, after his shoulder injury was re-aggravated. Um, so they're missing some big pieces, meaning the Red Sox up to this point. But I would keep Roman Anthony. I would do my best to keep Willie Abreu. We already talked about Ceddanne Rafaela. I think that he's a good idea to keep around. You do have control of Willson Contreras if you decide not to deal him at the deadline. Um, as good as Aroldis Chapman has been with his ERA under .5 this year, I think you can work a deal to get rid of him if need be, because I think Garrett Whitlock has been so good now for however many years that I think he could fill that closer role if you decide to get rid of Chapman. The one young guy I think I would think about possibly moving is Marcelo Meyer. I think that's because mostly he hasn't proven to be a consistent bat at the major league level yet. I know that the defense is undeniable, but when you have the guy who struggled to, he actually was below 200 in the month of May, and he's had some hits here and there in the month of June so far, but nothing really that's proven to be that consistent off the bat of Meyer just yet.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like you said, Joey, keeping Rafaela, keeping Willier. Honestly, I'd keep Contreras too. Just because he's got another year. So you got that, and he's proven he's a fit, which is I'm sorry I'm laughing, but like we stopped trying to bring in guys who know how to hit at Fenway. This is the one guy who knows how to hit at Fenway. Let's keep that guy, and then. So probably I would definitely trade Sonny Gray because he's got only 1 year on his contract. Chapman, it's tough. He's the best closer, but you would really have to wow me in a deal, if I'm being honest. If you give me your number 16 prospect, I'm going to tell you no. And the reason why is, and but if you gave me a guy who could play second base or, somebody at shortstop, you could intrigue me in a deal. If I had to include Marcelo Meyer in that deal too, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Um, but I don't want a number 20 prospect. I don't want a number 16 prospect for a role to Chapman.
You're looking for someone who can affect the major league roster right away.
Exactly.
Um,
Because I'm sick of this whole selling and retooling thing because I thought Bloom did a great job of that a few years ago. And then we needed somebody who could be aggressive and trade a lot of that away, or keep the guys that you can really use, like the Willier Abreu's, the Rafaelas, whatever. But, we should have sold high on Duran. We should have, kept Bregman. We should have, brought in a couple more veteran bats from the right side. And I just kind of knew that, you need to cash in on what you had. And now you're at that point where it's like, okay, now we're gonna have to give up something. We're really gonna have to give it up now.
yeah, and there was a report that came out earlier, a week or so back now, maybe 2 weeks at this point, related to the Sox acquiring a right-hand bat from Buster Olney, and he basically said that the Red Sox are willing to take on a bad contract with that, and um,
It's
in that,
desperation.
that's exactly what it is, and I think that's ownership showing the mistake that they made in part of the roster construction. Um, but we'll only have to keep watching and seeing how many, if they can finally go on a win streak, or if we're gonna
I
keep
saw one
middling
more
around.
rumor too, Joey, of Royce
Sure.
Lewis
Hmm.
being floated as a name, and I just thought that was bad because it's like another one of these gambles where it's like, oh, he might work out. Sure, he's a low cost, guy, but
Hmm.
he's been put to AAA because he hasn't been consistent enough. And excuse me,
You've seen a ton of guys kind of
yeah, it's like Groundhog
on
Day,
the
the movie with Bill Murray. Anybody who is wondering what I'm talking about, it's just like the same day over and over again. And it's a great movie. You should look it up if you don't know it. But it is really Groundhog Day in Boston, where it's like, oh, let's try to find the next miracle out of the
yeah,
dumpster. Are we the Boston
sort of
Athletics or the Boston Red Sox? Like, let's.
sort of the sort of the guys that have shown flashes, and
Yeah.
the Red Sox think they can bring them to the next level, but it's soon to be seen whether or not they really can. Obviously, Caleb Durbin's another one of the guys that I would say fall under that
You
category.
know who's really good at it though? The Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh yes, especially on the pitching side, and the Sox are very well aware of that, being in the AL East, and they got swept by the Rays before this series against Texas. But then they'll continue the AL East battles as they get the series started with Toronto on Tuesday. Uh, at the time of this recording, that would be tomorrow. And now let's move on to the playoff talk, as we have been doing here on the Titletown Rundown. Both series now over, so we'll get it going with a little bit of a recap. First, we'll go on the NBA side. Uh, as much as it pains us both to talk about as Boston Celtics fans, the New York Knicks have defeated the San Antonio Spurs in 5 games, and they deservedly so have won their first NBA championship in 53 years. The first time in 53 years that they've won the NBA title, I should say. And Jalen Brunson, who we talked about, had just been having okay games in the early parts of the series. He really showed up and was the star that he had been all season long for the New York Knicks. He had 81 combined points in games 4 and 5 en route to those 2 wins for the New York Knicks. Obviously, OG Anunoby had the big shot in game 4 to get them the win on the tip after the San Antonio Spurs blew the largest lead in NBA Finals history at 29 points. And then in game 5, Brunson had his bigger game out of that 81 combined points at 45 en route to a title he did get Finals MVP in large thanks to those two games that I just mentioned. And but it was overall just a really well played series by the Knicks. And I think I said on the night of the finals on Twitter that, simply put, the Knicks were just so much more clutch than the San Antonio Spurs pretty much down the stretch of every single one of those games.
What I noticed, Joey, first of all, screw the Knicks. Second of all, congratulations, I guess. But no, I noticed that there was quite a series of runs by both teams. Like they were close games. But then when you really needed to score late in the game, Jalen Brunson and the Knicks squad, they just found a way to win. And I think for San Antonio, they're just a young team. Remember when, Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum used to lose early in the NBA playoffs because they were young? Like, I think a guy like a Wemby has to go through that. Like he'll be fine. He'll be back there. Um, in the next 5 years, he'll be back there. He's kind of the future of the NBA. But like we talked about, Joey, Jalen Brunson was so clutch for them, and Anobi and all of these guys. They've all um but they've all been, in that league for so long too. A lot of them have. And it just seems like it was kind of a case of the veteran team got it done. And, a lot of people are saying that Wembenyama, is softer or whatever. Um, Listen, he's just young, he'll get his chance. Again, he'll get
Yeah,
another shot at it. And
I mean,
like
he didn't.
it's yeah, it's just overreaction to me. It's a little bit of an overreaction. Although I just hate talking about how good the Knicks played. I really do. As a Celtics fan, I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, Wembanyama didn't necessarily play the cleanest series. There are some things that he got away with. He honestly probably should have been called for a flagrant foul
Oh, come on. That's his
in,
physicality.
in game five. Well, there's a difference between physicality and especially this play I'm talking about is one of the landing space fouls when someone goes up for a three and you're contesting that with a hand up. When you go to jump and block it, if you make contact with their foot when you land back on the ground, that is considered a landing
Oh,
space foul, and all of those are reviewed and most of the time upgraded to a flagrant foul. That can be a different discussion for another time. But if it was, in terms of the physicality of the NBA, I mean, but generally, if that play was upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty one, he would have been suspended for game six. Ultimately, that didn't matter because the Knicks won the series in 5 games. But I think that there is some truth to the way that Wembanyama played, and I think that the more he plays, the more he's going to realize that building muscle and adding some strength, despite his 7'5" frame, which I know is going to be tough to necessarily build some muscle because he's got so much height, that he has to learn how to maneuver. That it's only going to be beneficial to him in the end because Karl Anthony Towns was playing him very strongly in the post for most of the series. Mitchell Robinson got a huge offensive rebound that allowed the Knicks to run some clock in Game 5 on their way to a win. So those are some things that I know we're going to stick with Victor Wembanyama throughout the offseason, and I'm sure he'll be back. But like you said, Kyler, they're a young team, so I think Wembanyama and the Spurs are bound to be back at some point, and their battle with the Thunder for tops in their Western Conference is going to be very exciting.
they weren't even
And
expected to get to this point yet. So the fact that people are like jumping on him a little bit, that's not necessarily fair. Um, I think Wemby does have things he's got to improve on. I didn't say that he didn't, but I do think it's kind of like how Tatum and Brown have had to learn how to, grow up a little bit, and and I think that you are going to see that Oklahoma City and Spurs rivalry grow, as you will, and intensify as those two teams continue to dominate the West. And good for the Knicks for winning their championship. I do kind of get critical of Celtics fans who are like, I wanted the Knicks to win. Excuse me? Like, you wanted the Knicks to win? Like, that's like
Yeah,
saying I want the Yankees to win the World Series. I'd rather crawl behind a rock and pretend it never happened. But
yeah. I'm not. I'm nowhere near
it's
gonna.
it's crazy. But Carl Anthony Towns though, playing Wembanyama and Mitchell Robinson as well. We knew that going into it that those guys would have to step up, right? We knew that there was going to need to be some help on the inside, and they did their job, and Brunson and some of the other guys, kind of carried like the scoring, but those guys really helped with Wemby, which is huge.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that now, from a Celtics perspective, you're there was always a thought that if the Celtics get the chance to play the Knicks when they have beat him, I'm part of the group that says they probably would have beat the Knicks if they got the opportunity, but they didn't get
They
their way
choked.
past
They choked.
Philadelphia, which is a whole nother uh, point of conversation. But I'm using this into a segue for our first NBA offseason point that I wanted to talk about. One of the first clips we ever posted to social media for the Title Town Rundown was our discussion of a potential Giannis trade to the Boston Celtics, which has picked up steam over these weeks since that post. And Bill Simmons reported yesterday that he still believes the Celtics are in it and that the trade could be done within the next week or so. And there's no doubt that if that sort of trade is going to happen, Jalen Brown will be involved in some way, shape, or form. And what seems to be becoming more and more of a possibility is that there is a three-team trade where Jalen Brown actually doesn't go directly to Milwaukee. He's the big piece for the third team. And I think that if Jalen Brown has any sort of say into where he goes, I think the most likely outcome is the Atlanta Hawks, as JB's originally from Atlanta, and he has a very deep connection to his hometown.
Well, Joey, I've seen reports already from the Boston media saying that he's getting ready to leave. And so I think something is going to happen. I don't know exactly what. I've heard other reports as well of different trades. But if this happens, I am going to wear a Greek Freak jersey, okay? I'm all for it. Let's win another championship and then sell the team off. Sell the farm. Not sell the team, but sell the pieces off the team, rebuild it. But hey, let's go get one more title. Why not? Listen, I think Antetokounmpo, he's still got it. You know what I mean? I still think he can play the way
Mm-hmm.
that he needs to, and he could be. We've already talked about this, but he could kind of be that down low guy and get us the points, similar to like a Wembanyama sort of, except for Wembanyama's even more tall and even more freakish, if you will, where he makes a lot more outside shots, but
Yeah.
but he gives you that scoring punch and a little bit of down low help. You would have to bolster your wing depth a little bit once you did get a Giannis, but I'm all for it. I think they kind of do need to reshape things so that they can try to win one or two more titles.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been kind of in between looking at the positives and the negatives of each of these, and I think that Um, Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum have obviously proven they can be a great duo in the NBA. They won the title in 2024, but I think that with the discourse that comes after they were eliminated, um, I think that Jaylen Brown's headspace remains in a sense where he can, or he feels like that he can be the number one option on a team, and
We've
he
had this
said that
fear
this.
for years, Joey, that there was going to be a battle between Tatum and Brown for who's the number one guy. And Tatum will always be the number one in Boston.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that his driving and rebounding skill set
Although
are
I love
different.
Jaylen Brown's heart compared to Tatum's.
There's that, and the mid-range game is a little bit different when it comes to Jaylen Brown.
Oh,
Um,
that jumper's sick.
but I think that you're right in that it's time to maybe experiment with something else, and Giannis can bring sort of a different play style to the Celtics, and I think it might finally force Joe Mazzulla to not check up a bunch of threes every single game, because that's not the type of player that Giannis is. Giannis can play down low as a forward or a small center, but he can also run the offense through him if you really want to. And I think that if you can make this deal where you're keeping Derek White as your third secondary scorer, that feels like a good lineup to me.
Yeah, and honestly, you'd have more flexibility in building your lineup too. But if I had a choice to either get rid of Jaylen Brown or Joe Mazzulla, I'd get rid of Joe Mazzulla. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, why you say that? Because he has you chucking up threes every game. That's why. Drive the ball. Drive the ball. I'm gonna sound like an 80-year-old old guy, like drive the ball, like from Boston. But it's true. They just get so one dimensional on offense, and they lost to a team they should have easily beat. They were up 3-1 or they were up in that series,
Yeah,
and
3-1's right. You got that right.
and yeah, and I was in when I was in Andover for that game, and nobody could hit a shot at the beginning or the end. The middle was okay, middle was great, but then at the beginning and the end, it was like, hello,
Yeah, and
drive
I
the
mean
ball.
that's a very similar way to how the going back to the NBA Finals really quick. If I can jump around,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a big reason as to why the Spurs lost Game 4. Is that in the early parts of that game, they couldn't miss, so they continued to shoot, and then the threes finally started to not fall, and that's when the Knicks turned up their intensity. They started making shots. They ran through the offense through Jalen Brunson all the way down the stretch, and Giannobi gets a huge tip in layup for the game winner, and the Garden goes nuts.
Do you
And
think
I think,
that Giannis
go
would
ahead.
be enough? Sorry, do you think Giannis would be enough?
Do I think Giannis would be enough? I mean, I would have to see how the starting lineup plays to really know what to expect. I don't think that they can only get Giannis and then immediately are ready to go right now. I would expect there to be some sort of replacement for Nikola Vucevic in your center depth. I think that Nemish Keita did a good job in his role as the majority starting center, but I don't think that he needs to be a starting center in the NBA right now. I think he's much more fit to be your starting center or your center off the bench, I should say. And you could either look for a starting caliber center or look for someone that is interchangeable with Keita so that you can feel comfortable with either of them on the court.
That name to me sounds like Ish, and he's Okada, and he kind of played like it in Game 7 against Joel Embiid. You do need somebody who can defend those superstar centers like the Wembys or the Joel Embiids or the Jokic's. Like, I think teams that have those types of players are the teams that were kind of beating the Celtics, not because that the Celtics couldn't outscore them, but because they didn't have that size and physicality down low and playing one dimensionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as more news comes about, we'll be sure to keep up with it as well. And um if a Giannis trade does happen, we'll be sure to focus a majority of the episode on that. I'm sure we'll get some other NBA voices in as well to give their thoughts. But let's now finish out this evening's episode with the Stanley Cup Finals, which have been won by the Carolina Hurricanes in 6 games. Kyler, we were praising Vegas all the way throughout this postseason, and then we were excited to see how Carolina and Vegas clashed in a series. It was a high scoring affair.
Oh, every game was close. Every game was
In
close. We love it.
there we go. Okay,
I'm back. Sorry.
I lost you for a second, but here we are.
Yeah. So every game was close and competitive throughout that series. But what really kind of stuck out to me is Rod Brindamore's decision to replace Frederick Anderson with Brandon Bussey, the former Bruin, who apparently they should have held on to. But we can get to that at a different day and time. But
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think that
actually thought that was a great decision by Brindamore when they were down in the series because because they honestly needed a little bit of a spark, and Freddie started to get tired, and I actually like how he made that decision. I think Torts probably should have gone to Hill, if I'm being honest, because Carter Hart had so many good games throughout the first 3 series, but then when he got to that Stanley Cup Finals, he did not play well at all. And I'm actually going to read off some stats, Joey, that I found on these two guys,
sure.
just to kind of like recap it a little bit. Um, so Bussy, he had 1.60 goals against average in 4 games. 3 started in the final series. His save percentage was a 9.31 in that 4 game stretch. And then Carter Hart had a 1-3 record with a 306 goals against average and a 8.94 save percentage. He allowed 12 goals in 113 shots over those 4 matchups. So, you know, it just came down to goaltending and who can get hotter. And I think by Brindamore making that decision, it really changed the momentum of the series from, oh, Vegas is going to win this thing to Torts. Can you get your can you like pull something out of a hat here? And he was so confident that it was going to go 7 games. If you thought you had a chance to win it, why didn't you go to Aiden Hill in that
Yeah, and I
6th
mean,
game? What do you
it
have to
was a huge
lose?
it was a huge difference because Bussy comes away with the first shutout of the Stanley Cup Finals, where during a stretch of the early games of the uh, series, the total goals was anywhere between 7 to 9, and then you had a 3-0 game in Game 6 and a 4-2 game in Game 5. So right around there still, but um, like you mentioned, close all the way through. But Bussy made the difference in Game 6 because he was just there every time uh, Vegas had a chance. Jack Eichel had a really good opportunity in that one to get Vegas on the board that he was just I think he just nicked the crossbar on it. And if there was anybody that really needed to step up for Vegas, it was him because he was struggling to find the back of the net um, for most of the postseason. Thankfully, he was really good at distributing the puck. But on a game where nobody can find the net, somebody's got to come up and figure out a way to get it across the line. And
I also think
unfortunately,
they just got tired out too. I think they just ran out of gas.
which which tends to happen. I think that happened a lot. Not to cross sports here, but I'll do it briefly. That happened a lot with Victor Wembanyama. His conditioning didn't look great down the stretch of a lot of those games, and I think it came back to bite San Antonio, and it similarly might have done it to Vegas in this one
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. And I just look at this, and I am happy for Carolina, believe it or not. Good for Brenda Moore. He won the last cup as a player, and he gets to share it with his team now as he's coaching them. Um,
Yeah,
but I was really rooting for Vegas. Because they really did go on a good run. But I also thought it was impressive that they went on the run that they went on because they won the least amount of games out of any team,
yeah.
and they fired their coach and they went on this magical run. So it was kind of a miracle. But they I wish that they had kind of pulled out all the stops to try to get one more win.
As much success as Vegas had, it was a dominant run all the way through for Carolina. They only lost 3 games the entire postseason because they swept the first 8 games they played, lost a game to Montreal, and only 2 games to Vegas. So, as
Yeah,
much
they
as
were
we want to
solid.
talk
They were
about,
solid all the way.
as much as we want to talk about John Tortorella and the job he did with
Brindamore has been unbelievable.
and the job he did with Vegas, Rob Brindamore gets just as much, if not more, credit for the dominant run that Carolina went on. And it's a cool story for
He should have
Brindamore.
more because he's led them to the playoffs so many years in a row.
And they finally were able to break through. Obviously, you mentioned he was a player and a captain of that 2006 Carolina Hurricanes team that won the Stanley Cup. And now he gets to be the coach of their next Stanley Cup team exactly 20 years later. So a very much full circle moment for Rob Brindamore, which now brings upon the uh, off season for the NHL as well, and we're in the works on putting together a NHL offseason and Bruins offseason podcast here on the Titletown Rundown. But just to finish off the episode and our first episode as a part of Boston Sports Zone, we wanted to kind of go all the way through and look at the outline of all of the 4 major Boston sports teams. I think um, what we talked about leading into this, Kyler, we'll start with the Red Sox, is that um, inconsistency is kind of reigning supreme up to this point in the season. But there are things that have made um, the Red Sox exciting. A lot of that has to do with their young players. I want to point out very quickly Peyton Tolley, who's on the mound tomorrow in the opener against Toronto. He's been extremely fun to watch. He's a really funny guy on the mic after the game, but he also has an electricity about him that has been really fun to watch every time he goes out. And I think that there's so little good energy surrounding this Red Sox team because they've been down the bottom of the league for the majority of the season, and they're on the verge of being the worst team in the American League. They've been bouncing up and down from that, and I think that you mentioned in Game 3 we saw a number of Scottish soccer fans take over Fenway Park after their 1-0 victory in their opener against Haiti in the uh, World Cup. But there's usually such an energy that comes around with the Red Sox that's lacking at this point.
Yeah, and I did actually go into Boston this past weekend, and just the buzz around Boston with having those Scottish visitors that we do appreciate, the vibe that it gave is just awesome. You know what I mean? It's just bringing that title town to give you my rundown of the title town, if you will. It just gives you that sense of winning and that sense of accomplishment, that energy that Boston sports fans can give you when we're winning titles. It makes me want to go through a wall to go see the Red Sox win another championship. Like it gives me that type of energy, or a Bruins Stanley Cup, or even I'll even take Brad Stevens retooling this roster and getting a championship next year. But to rank my faithfulness, if you will, or belief in these teams 1 through 4, real quick, is the Patriots would be my number one right now. They just went to the Super Bowl, even though they have a tough schedule. They just got AJ Brown, um, you have McDaniels, you have Rabel, you have Drake May, you have Gonzalez, Campbell, all your main pieces pretty much together. That's my number one. Number two is I believe in Stevens, similar to I believe in Gallo. I believe in Stevens. He's like the talent evaluator of the year every year, in my opinion. He's a better GM than he ever was a coach, and he was a great coach. In my opinion, Hall of Fame coach. But his ability to evaluate talent is just remarkable, and I think that he is going to find a way to retool this team to another championship. I just do, and he gets in the playoffs every year. Number 3 for me is the Bruins. They'll probably make the playoffs again. Don't really love the Jacobs family or Don Sweeney, and I wish that Bussy was our backup compared to Corpusalo, who
Well,
really,
we do have Michael DiPietro, who I actually expect to come up and be the backup in place of Corpusalo.
yeah.
So we will maybe get an opportunity to see a young goalie get a chance with the Bruins this year.
Or Max Lundgren in 2 years, maybe.
Oh,
Let's keep on that
uh,
hype train too. Why
I mean,
not?
as proud Merrimack Warriors, we'd be thrilled to have that happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, if he ever got called up, I'd be at that game with a few other guys. That's for sure. Um, and I'd bring you along with me, Joey. I really would. Um, but the team I have the least faith in right now is the Red Sox. Like we've said, inconsistency. We've even heard from Buster Olney that the organization is just being run terribly right now. People don't even want to pick up and make a trade with Boston because they don't even know what's going on. So people who know what's going on don't even know what's going on. So, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But this World Cup crew makes me want another championship in Boston. That is my crazy rundown of the week for you, but it's true. It just makes me want to have another championship, even though I just got one in my Merrimack hockey team. But I don't want to keep touting that for the next 5 years. I
Yeah,
want a different championship to talk about, uh, but you know what? It is title town. We expect that in Boston. We expect championships. We expect good vibes, even if you're not winning a championship, but you're going on a nice run. Um, when the Red Sox a few years back, when I was graduating high school, had Kyle Schwarber and that group kind of go on a little run. That city got so electric. It kind of reminds me of the Scottish invasion now. Can we get a little run like that? It's like it just really brings the city alive. Even people that are non-sports fans are going just to check out what the racket is, just for fun, and other people are telling me about it, and they're like, "Hey, just so you know, this is really awesome downtown with the Scots and the kilts, and hey, It just seems like a good time. And then you see it, and then you see the video of them at Fenway Park, and they're all, having a great time, dancing, smiling. Like, where are the good vibes at? Why can't we be doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it. I think you hit it on the head. I would have my ranking of the four teams exactly how you did. With the Patriots at one, Celtics at two, Bruins at three, and Red Sox at four. Just to quickly go over those, I'll start with the Red Sox at four. Um, I have no idea what direction they're going. We've talked about so many different things with all these Titletown rundown episodes that you don't really know. They could go and make moves to get closer to a World Series, or they could go and sell and restart everything all over again. So there's only so many. Um, those two avenues are complete opposites. So I really don't know where that's gonna go. Quickly, in terms of the Bruins, obviously they made the playoffs as a very young team in their first year under Marco Sturm, so they have some work to do. But I think the fact that they were able to find the postseason is a great step in the right direction. And similarly, if they can get enough engagement from Don Sweeney as the general manager, and Cam Neely and company as the higher ups to invest in this team and make the right moves, they're going to only continue to improve. And then we go to the Celtics, and the Patriots are 1A, 1B, really, because they're the closest to it. Obviously, May and the Patriots made it to the Super Bowl with the eventual loss to the Seattle Seahawks, but Drake May was my MVP. I know that Matt Stafford won the MVP, but Drake May um, made it further than Matt Stafford, and I think that that should be taken into account way more than the MVP should be a regular season award. Um, and I think that the talent that was shown and the adding of AJ Brown and the possibility of extending both Drake May and Christian Gonzalez in the future uh, shows me that the Patriots rather have their pillars of the future, and they're going to um, continue to improve. And then, similar to everything that Kyler said on the Celtics, they're just a couple moves away. The roster is going to look different, especially if Jalen Brown is traded. But having Jason Tatum, possibly keeping Derek White, and we know the skill level of player that Giannis is if he does end up coming to Boston. But even if he's not, even if he doesn't, and they keep Jalen Brown, I think they're still going to compete for a title. And the eventual series that will be the New York Knicks and Boston Celtics somewhere down the road in the NBA playoffs is going to be quite the one to watch.
I can't wait for it. To be honest, I can't wait for it. I actually hope we take them down. I really do. They're getting cocky. But so don't we. So it's fair
I
enough.
was gonna say, I think that
Um,
I think that's what every Celtics fan wants.
but
But I
I
think that
do.
was a I think that was a great discussion of everything happening in the world of Boston sports in recently. We'll be back next week for rather we'll be back later on this week for another episode of the Titletown Rundown here on Boston Sports Zone. Thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your night.